Hey guys, in this video we are going to work on our register and login system or authentication using React, Node, Express, Mongodb and JWT tokens. So let's start by testing our registration process. Let's add the name Rose Miller and email rose@gmail.com, and let's give this user a password and confirm it and sending. It is loading and gave us the successful message that the user account has been created. Now let's test the login process. Let's log out and log in again using rose@gmail.com, the same user with the same password, and let's send. Loading again, and we are successfully logged in. And if I have time, I am going to work on profile as well to update the information of the user. Let's test here by updating the name and choosing an image and submit. It is successfully updated. If we check again, the information has been updated. So let's get started. Let's go to the Mongo Atlas. And let's go to database access to create a new user. Let's give it a name, test user, and the password. And we are going to give this user a specific privileges, only to read and write into a specific database. We are going to call it travel. And this is just, I need it to be deleted because everyone can see my password. And make sure also to add network access. If you have a real domain, just add the real IP here. Don't allow everyone to access. But in my testing environment, I am allowing access from any IP. Let's go now to database and let's go to connect. Connect your application and let's copy this link. Let's go and add it to our environment variables. In the server side, let's call it Mongo Connect, and let's paste here and update the user name. And the password. And here our database travel. Let's save and go to the index. And here let's connect to our database. But we need to install first the Mongoose package. Let's install Mongoose. And let's import it here. And here let's connect by calling mongoose.connect and pass our environment variable here we just created. Let's save and go to the models and create a new model. Let's call it user. Let's first create a schema of the user using mongoose.schema and the object will be name type string. Min length for the name is 2 and max is 50, and it is required. And let's copy it 3 times. For email, let's add them in to be 5 and unique to be true. Let's fix this. Password, we don't need these length because we are going to test that in our controller. And photo URL, we need to add a default to be an empty text. Now let's create our model. By passing the name users and the schema we just created. And let's export it as a default. Let's go now to the controllers and create a new one for the user. First controller will be register. It is a sync function. We receive the request and the response. And let's try and catch to communicate with our database in Mongo. First, let's extract the fields we have received in the request body. It is name, email, and password. And let's check if the length of the password is less than 6 characters. We will send a response that it is not allowed to be less than 6 characters. Don't ever trust the client side because it is easy for anyone to change the code in the client side. Let's send this message to the user. Password must be 6 characters or more. Now let's change all the letters of the email to be lowercase, because sometimes user can misspell the letters and add some capital letters. And now let's check if the user already exists in our database by calling user.findOne and pass the email. So if the user already exists, we will retain a response to the user that this is bad request with JSON success false. And the message user already exists. Now if we don't have any problems, we will hash our password, but we need to install a package. It is Bcryptjs, and let's import it here. Now let's hash our password using bcrypt.hash and pass it the password and the complexity of the salt. Now let's use our model user to create a new user. We'll pass the name, the email, and the hashed password, and the photo URL will take the default value empty text. After the user has been created, we will extract some fields so we can send them back to the client side. And now let's create the token for the user using JWT token. Let's install this package, JsonWebToken. Now let's import JWT. And let's use it to sign our token. JWT.sign. We will add ID, name, and photo URL because we need these fields to add them with the room record. And let's add a secret private key. Let's call it JWT secret. You can add whatever you want here. And let's pass it as a second argument. And let's add the other options inside an object, like expiry date for this token. And let's send a successful result with 201 status. Success is true. And the result, we will add the information of the user. ID, name, email, photo URL, and the token. In case of error, we will console log the error. And we will send a response with the status 500 with JSON object. Success is false. And message. Something went wrong. Try again later. Let's save. And let's go to the routes and add router for the user. Let's initialize the router by calling the router object from Express. And let's listen on any post request on user-register. We will pass that request to our function register. Let's now export this router and use it in a middleware in our index. Let's copy this middleware, add it here, change it to user, and to our router user room here. Let's save. I have a problem here. Yeah, it is the required. We forget to add the true in our model. Let's go and update it. Here we need to add a true. Let's update all the properties. And let's save again. Now it's working. Let's now go to client side and work on our functionality from our login component. This is our handle submit function. We don't need these anymore. It is just for testing. We used them before to test our alert and our loading system. Now let's store the value in our email field in a variable email. And the password as well. Password ref.current.value. Here we are going to check later if it is login state. It is not the register. We will just send a login request and we will return. We are to stop the execution here. But if the state is register, we are going to extract our name as well from the field name. Name ref.current.value. And the confirm password from its field. First, let's check if the passwords match. If it is not, we will return an alert for the user that the passwords don't match. We're going to use our alert system. Type is update alert. Payload open true. Severity is error. And we will send the message. Passwords don't match. And here we are going to send the registration form. We are going to create a function for that. To make our work more organized, we are going to create a new folder. We will call it actions. And we are going to create one for the user. And we are going to store all the functions that are responsible for communicating with the server for all the requests related to the user. Let's first create a variable URL. We will bring our server URL from our environment variable. And we will add our link user. And our first function is register. This function will be responsible of communicating with the server regarding the registration process. It will receive the user object or fields and the dispatch to dispatch the actions on our state. Let's first dispatch the loading. We are going to show our loading icon and let's copy it to end our loading. and in between we are going to add our functionality. Here we are going to send our request using fetch function. Let's build a new function for that. We don't want every time to create a header, method and body. We will just add a general function for all of that to deal with everything and to manage if there is an error occurred. And we are going to make it flexible so we can use it by all the requests. Let's call it fetch data. It is a sync function. And it will receive an object. In this object, the URL we are going to request, and the method we are going to make the default post because we are going to use it more than get. Token as a default empty, that means there is no authorization header, and the body is null if there is no body. And we will receive the dispatch as well. And let's export it as a default. Let's first create our headers. If we receive a token, we are going to add that token to our headers using authorization. And in case there is no token, we are not going to use the authorization. Now let's deal with the body. If we receive a body as a parameter, we are going to add an object and we are going to stringify that body. Otherwise, we will add only an empty object. Now let's make the request using fetch, and we will pass the URL, method, headers, and we will spread our object body. And now we are going to extract our data from the response using response.json. If we received a failed response, we are going to check if the status is 401. That means we are not authorized. That means the user manipulated or modified or used expired token. We are going to log the user out. Using the dispatch, we are going to dispatch type update user and the payload null. And after that, we are going to throw new error with the message we received from the server. And we will catch the error here. We will show the user the message using our alert system. Type update alert, payload, open true, severity is error, and the message will be our error message. And let's console log it as well. case of success, we are going to retain the object inside the result. And in case of failure, we are going to return null. This result, we are going to deal with that in our register action. So let's save and go to our action. Let's now request that result. Const result equals, we are going to await because it is a sync function, and let's pass it. URL is our URL we created before, and we are going to add the register. Body is the user body, it is name, email, and the password. And we are going to pass the dispatch as well. If we received an object in the result, we are going to update the state of the user. Dispatch type update user, and the payload will be the object we received from the server. And we are going to close our login model. And show the user a successful message that the account has been created. Payload is open true, severity this time success, and the message, your account has been created successfully. Let's save, and let's go and use this function in our login component. Here we are going to send the request using this function, and we are going to pass the user object, name, email, and password, and the dispatcher. Let's save, and let's check. Let's try to register. Let's add the name, Eric Jackman, and the email, eric@gmail.com. And let's give this a password and confirm password, and let's send. We received an error. Our server triggered an error. Let's check what is that. We didn't receive a correct body. That's why the password length is undefined. Let's go to our controller. This is what triggers the error when we check the length of the password. Let's check when we send the request. Let's go to our fetch data function. Here I forgot to add the JSON. Let's add it and test again. Let's now submit the form. Now it is successful. The account has been created. And if we log out, we are out. Let's now test our check on the password in the server side if it is less than 6 characters. Let's add this account, test at test.com, and let's add 123 as a password less than 6. If we try to submit, we receive this message that it should be 6 characters. This is client-side check. It is only an HTML. We can update that easily. So let's change the code here. Let's inspect. And delete this condition. Min length is 6. And the confirm as well. And let's try to send. We passed the client to check, but if we submit, our server check can't be passed because it is a server side and the user can't access that code. So we received this message. Now let's update our password to satisfy the condition. And let's submit. It is now a successful message. The user has been created. If we refresh, the user stayed logged in because we saved the information in our local storage. That was before in our last video. Now let's go back to our controller and refactor our code. This try and catch will be repeated in all our functions. So let's create a function to deal with that. Let's call it try-catch.js. This function will receive our controller function as a parameter and will retain the same controller after wrapping it inside try and catch block. So we are going to retain a sync function with rec and res, and we are going to add try and catch here. Let's copy this catch from here and replace this. And let's invoke our function or controller and passing again the same parameters. When we receive a function as a parameter, we received automatically it is parameters. Let's export it as a default. And let's delete this try and catch here and wrap our controller with this new function. Let's save and test again. And let's try to create an account already exists to check if the new function can manage our error messages. And now when we send, the error message appears. That means our function works correctly and catch our errors. Now let's go back and work on our login process. Let's create our function login. And let's wrap it by the same function, try catch. and pass our function here. Let's copy our register function and paste it here in our login function. Here we are not going to receive the name, only email and password, and we don't need this check. Here we will check if the user doesn't exist. We are going to send the status for 04 with the message user doesn't exist. And here we will check if the password is correct. We will use compare function and we will pass it password, and the password we just brought from our database. If it is not correct, we will retain a status 400. Success is false, and the message invalid credentials. Here let's delete this, and here let's extract the name as well from our existed user. The token is the same, we'll pass the same fields, and in case of success we will send the status 200, and here the email is our email lowercase, and let's save and go to the router. Let's add one more router for this functionality. Let's copy this and update to login, and the function is our controller login. Let's save and go to our client side. Let's go to the actions and copy the register function. Let's update it to login. We will receive the same parameters, and here let's change the link. We will do here the same, but we don't need to alert the user by creating an account because the account is already created. Let's save and go to our login component, and let's use it here. If the state of our component is not register, that means it is login. We will stop the execution here and return our result of our function login, and we'll pass it email, password, and the dispatcher. Let's now save and check. Let's switch to login, and let's use the same account. Let's submit, and we are in. Our login process is working as well, and if we refresh, the user stays logged in. And here is our user in the local storage. Updating the user profile, we are going to work on it in the next video. But here I waited more than 1 hour, I want to show you when you send a request to the server and the token has already expired, how the system will log you out automatically. So let's try to update here our profile and submit the request. Now we logged out automatically. Something wrong with your authorization. We are going to work on all of that in the next video. So see you guys in our next video.